Hello and welcome back to Urban Yoke. My name is Giulia and as always I'm delighted to have you here. So benvenuti, bentornati, and let's get into today's video. Now first of all, I do look a little crazy, but that's how it is when you're pregnant, I guess, right? You get a little tired looking all the time. But anyway, today's video is actually about tips on renting in Italy, and this is more for long-term rentals, residential rentals, or anything that is shorter than 4 years. It could also be useful for that, but it's more guided for people who are looking to move here for an extended period of time or even permanently. It's a bit of a minefield, so I tried to make a comprehensive list of of tips and essentially tricks, things to know before renting and before signing a contract that many people might find confusing. I really hope that this is a comprehensive list that is as comprehensive as I can think of, at least at this stage. So if you do have questions, please ask me in the comments. I'm sure it will be useful for other people watching this video as well, and then I'll be able to comment and add it to the full list. Okay, so I've got my list here on the screen next to me, and yeah, so I've written an article on it too. I'll link it down in the description if you want to actually just go through it and get a little bit more detail on each topic. So tip number 1 is get a security deposit insurance plan if possible. What I mean by that is, instead of paying for the deposit or the security deposit, as I believe some people call it, for the apartment, get insurance that you generally have to pay yearly, and they cover the security deposit situation. The main reason is that you don't want to be in a situation where you are about to move out, you're waiting for your deposit back from the landlord or the rental agency, and it doesn't come. That is unfortunately something that happens in Italy all too often, and it's a big problem for people who are foreigners, because it's much harder for us to to fight back and actually get it. And being foreigners, they also take advantage of the fact that you might not know all the ins and outs of Italian property law. And rental law is just one of those things. You might have done some research already and read that as the tenant you have a lot of rights and there's certain things a landlord can't do, yada yada yada. But the fact of the matter is that if you don't get your security deposit back from the landlord or rental agency, you're going to have to get a lawyer involved to assist you, and that can be very costly and often lead to mediation or even court. And if that's the case, you're going to land up spending more than what the actual deposit was, and then it's financially not worth it. Or some people simply don't have the funds for a lawyer, and that can also put you in a difficult situation, because yes, you know that you're right, but if he simply doesn't give it to you, then you have to get a lawyer, and the chances are that the landlord or rental agency has a lawyer already on retainer to take care of such issues. So it can be very daunting, it can be very difficult to deal with, and that's my number 1 tip is, get insurance if you are able to. If you are not able to, I do have a few other tricks or tips rather, for how to kind of force them into a situation where they have to pay it. Because if you're willing to show that you're willing to go to court even, or mediation, it might be enough for the rental agency or the landlord to landlady to pay you back. So it is a big problem in Italy. Unfortunately, it's just something that happens. I don't think there's any country in the world where there are property owners or property managers that are all completely decent and abide by the law. Every country is going to have their problems. Italy has just a lot of loopholes and ways of pushing the tenant into a situation where they find it difficult to get their security deposit back, and that's very frustrating. Because another fact in that point is that a landlord or agency or landlady can use only a quote for claimed damages and doesn't even have to prove that they had the damages fixed in order to claim on the security deposit. So that can be a real nasty thing. It puts a lot of people in a really bad situation. I read a case where a lady, she was moving back to England, and the landlord was claiming 10,000 euros of damages and refused to assist her, and she was caught up in a situation where she just didn't understand the law well enough, and the landlord obviously willingly left this information out so that he could take advantage of the situation. And that's just not cool. And I don't want other people coming to Italy and having the same issues. It can be very difficult to get through the bureaucratic system here, and everything is a bureaucratic system. Going through the hospital is the same thing. That I'll do in a later video where I'll discuss a little bit more about the difficulties we've had there. And in the next video, I'll also talk about some of the difficulties we've had with my husband's permit. And this is no different. Renting an apartment is just as bureaucratic as anything else in Italy. The language is confusing, and the laws are quite different to many other countries, at least English-speaking countries. But from what I can tell, it's just different from many countries in general. So that's tip number one. I know it's a bit long-winded. This is probably going to be a long video, but please stick it through and, you know, get the tips in there. Otherwise, like I said, I will leave a link down below to the article, but I'd like it if you watched the video, because I might say something here that I didn't put in the article, and just having both gives you the best chances of having all the information and allow you then to ask questions in the comments, which I do encourage, because yeah, this stuff is very confusing, and it's taken me almost the entire year of living here to figure a lot of these things out, because they are not apparent up front, and I've had to speak to a lawyer as well as a union to be able to get some of this information, and land up spending a lot more money and not getting our security deposit back from the previous apartment, because that landlord is a horrible person, and that's all there really is to say about him. And we landed up in this situation, and it's exactly why I want to share about it and why I know about it. Other people don't deserve to go through this, especially the fact that foreigners land up having to go through this, even though they're people that are coming here to study or to live here permanently, and they're adding to the economy and paying taxes, but they get treated like garbage by some people. For the most part, Italian culture is very open and welcoming, and we haven't had any issues, but there are situations that can really dampen the mood and the experience of being here. So being aware from the beginning will also put you in the right position and get you to people that are better suited to actually following the rules. Okay, so tip number 2, and this is a very important one, and it is an extra cost, but it's totally worth it. In many cases, you will have a contract proposal prior to seeing the actual contract. Have that checked by a property lawyer. If you are already in Italy, you could look at joining one of the unions like Sunia. They can help by checking and making sure that it is correct, but I do think that it's worth the extra cost of a consultation with a lawyer to have a look at the contract proposal, and then also have them check the contract before signing. So you can sign the proposal and then refuse the contract. And that's an important factor. In South Africa and in Switzerland, as far as I know, there is no proposal. They send you the contract and you review the contract and then decide. Whereas here you get a proposal first, much like buying a house or buying a property, and then you get the contract to decide whether yes or no. So why do I say have that checked? Because there's language in there that you simply will not understand, even if you speak Italian. Italian speakers don't understand it necessarily. It is confusing. It is legal jargon that is very confusing. And what happened with us is the way that they had split up the money was not the way they told us they had split it. What do I mean by that? So I'm sure this is true for other countries as well. In South Africa, this is not typically something we have to pay. It is sometimes if it's an estate, but it's for condominium fees, condominio. And what I mean is that you've got your rent. So the rent is for the actual place, and then you have to pay for fees such as sanitation, taking care of the building maintenance, and the cleanliness of the building. So that's the condominium fees, and that's all apartment buildings will have some kind of fees for that, and they can range from 50 euros a month to 300 euros a month depending on where you're staying, what region you're staying in, and the type of building that it is and what they offer. If there's an elevator, chances are it's going to be a little bit more because of elevator maintenance and so on. So everybody in the building contributes to that via the rental agency or landlord, but it's actually via the landlord, and they have to pay it to the building administrator. And the building administrator is the person who takes care of the building, making sure that all of the stuff happens. Like if the garden needs to be sorted out, if sewage needs to be sorted out, if the gas line needs to be sorted out, the water, whatever it is, they have to make sure that they fix it. And that's what you pay towards. So there's no random costs at any point in time. And sorry. And that's an important factor. So what we were told, and it was like this in the proposal, was that our rent was 550 euros a month, and our condominium fees were 50 euros a month. Considering the place is quite small and it only really has garden service once a month, outside of winter, and winter it doesn't have a garden service at all. Sorry, and it's supposed to then contribute to, the gas and all of that stuff that needs to be maintained. So what happened with us is that when the contract came, there's a part of the contract where I did not understand the splitting of it. And when I asked the rental agent, she told me that it was just economically more sound for the landlord to do it that way, and it had no bearing on us. I foolishly, not knowing better, left it at that. I thought, okay, cool, no. Well, why would she lie to me? She totally lied. She outright lied, and there's a very good chance that this landlord and her committed fraud. Why do I say that? Because what the split actually was, that they had made it so that our rent was only 250 a month. And the rest of it was technically the condominium fees. The reason they do that, or why many shady people do that, is so that they can pocket the extra money and only claim income on the 250 euros. Because you don't claim income on the condominium fees. That is just a fee, like a utility bill, that the renter has to pay. The tenant. Basically, what they did was, in a very sneakily way, they were able to pocket this extra money and made us pay extra rent, essentially, because we were not aware of that. And this is something that the lawyer had to explain to me. I was quite shocked. I was annoyed and honestly just taken aback at the greed of these people. It just never stopped. And a minute the lawyer got involved, the rental agent suddenly disappeared. And yeah, I am not happy with her. And honestly, I haven't figured out where to report her because I don't think she deserves to have a license to rent. So if you are using a rental agency, make sure that the people renting to you are licensed. That's an important factor. And this could have been avoided if I had taken that extra step to have a property lawyer, not just any lawyer, a property lawyer in Italy check it. There are many that speak English, so that's not a problem. And you can do a virtual sit down with them. Many of them are open to this, and just have them check and explain to you point by point what is in their contract. Because you might find yourself in a situation where you simply cannot understand, or you might land up owing extra money that didn't make sense to you from the beginning, because they don't have to tell you as long as you sign the contract. So have that checked. Have the proposal and the contract checked, and make sure that the split is what they told you, and take a screenshot of the original listing of the apartment where it should say whether or not it is which part is for condominium and which part is for rental. So what are the condominium fees and what are the rental fees? And if it doesn't say it and you're still going to contact them, have them email you with the information and the details, including the electricity and gas rating. So you want to be in the A to C range, and anything more than that is going to cost you quite a lot a month, like energy rating of a G. So if they leave it out of the listing, that's also a red flag, but you can ask them for it, and make sure they email you. Have everything in email, everything in writing. Do not accept information over the phone only. Cool. So that's tip number 2. Sorry, like I said, this is going to be a long video, and it might feel a bit strenuous, but there's a lot of information to go through because people can't be trusted. And I didn't want to go through a quick, here's my 5 tips, and then just like 6 minutes of giving you tips without understanding why and how I came about this information. And unfortunately, as they say, I learned the hard way by finding myself in a bind with the previous landlord. He claimed for damages that did not happen. He claimed that we left the place dirty, which we did not. And there was a lot of things that he claimed, and we could not necessarily prove it according to the lawyer, even though I had everything. I had pages, like a stack like this of emails confirming certain things to them. And we still ended up having to forfeit. We had to forfeit our deposit because we simply could not afford to go forward. We had to move a few months after arriving. Then 2 of our cats got quite ill, and that cost us over 2,000 euros to get them better. So they're totally fine now, they're happy. Obviously the deposit of moving into the new place, and then the lawyer fees. We lost so much money, and honestly I'm not even entirely sure how we made it work, but we did. Now we've got to recuperate all of that, and it's all because this one person just decided not to pay it back because he's a greedy, horrible person. And I spoke to the previous tenants and the exact same thing happened to them, and previous people actually got the police involved. So it helps to have these things checked And if you can get a reference, I mean, why not ask for a reference from a previous tenant for the landlord? If they say no, well, I mean. Okay, so that was tip number 2. Number 3, a very important factor. And I was a little bit taken aback by this because in South Africa, you don't have to do this. In Italy, you have to pay the rental agent as well. So the, what do you call it? Sorry. The landlord or landlady that has the rental agent in their employ will pay the rental agent as well, and then you have to pay 10% of the annual rental to the rental agent as well. It might be more than 10%, it might be a little bit less, but it's usually around 10%. And yeah, so that's something to factor in. We had to pay 720 euros to the rental agent for not finding us, for just putting a listing up and showing my mom the apartment. And that really drove me insane, that they can charge so much money for doing a very little work in comparison, because you still have to pay for a whole bunch of things like the registration of the contract and everything outside of their fee. So that really annoyed me, and that's something to take into consideration as well. So when you pay the rental fee to the agent, what will be included is the registration of the contract. So if you go ahead with the contract, make sure to ask for the receipt and confirmation that the contract has been registered with the revenue agency. So you want that and you need that. Whatever it is that you ask for confirmation and receipt, and if you think it's absolutely necessary, have it delivered by registered mail as well. So yeah, that's an important factor. When you finally find a place, take a friend with if you can. If you can't take a friend with, like if you're moving here like we did and you don't know anyone, find out from the lawyer that you used if they can provide a service, or if they know someone, or if they themselves will be able to be available for the inspection. You want a friend there for the inspection. So essentially someone who is not on the contract. And when you do the inspection, insist on a list, ask them to make a list, and you need to make a list of your own, go through the apartment with them and take photos. Take photos of everything. I mean, whatever exaggerated amount of photos it seems, take it. Take photos of absolutely everything, and then have the rental agent and the landlord sign that checklist. Send it to them via email, have them sign it, and send it back to you, including the photos. Have proof that you've done this. Print that out. Print out the photos, print out the signed checklist. Make sure whatever is in that house you've taken a photo of, you've listed, and any damages especially, everything. Do not leave one thing out. And this is absolutely important. And make sure that your witness, whoever it is willing to be there again for when you leave the apartment. Because why? You're going to do the exact same thing when you leave the apartment. You have to make sure that you check everything again, you do all the photos again, and you have them sign that checklist. And along with that checklist, you have them sign a letter that says everything is in good standing, the keys have been handed over, and the deposit will be reissued with a specific date. Now that is if you don't have the deposit insurance, but honestly, have that in there anyway. Put a specific date in by when it's going to be issued, and it should be no later than 7 days after you've handed those keys. Because the minute they have those keys, It could be end of days for you. So make sure you've got all of that information. Sorry. Okay, then my tip number 5 is get everything in writing. And I've already said this, but make sure everything's in writing. If they call you to say, hey, we need to send the plumber over to do whatever, fine, no problem. Send it to me in writing first, and then we can arrange a date. Say, I want everything in email, I want everything in writing, and only through writing will I agree or acknowledge anything. You say, I do not acknowledge that this is happening. I only acknowledge that you are going to send me an email about work that needs to be done. Just keep telling them, you send me an email. That's it. I don't want to have phone calls discussion because it becomes he said, she said situation. So you are going to have it all in writing. So there's no disillusion about what happened. That's it. And hopefully this kind of action will make people uncomfortable enough that they are not going to try and take advantage of you. Or even just being this way from the very beginning will likely attract the right kind of landlord or landlady. Because everywhere that I've lived, rental agents are really difficult to deal with. But Italy's been by far the worst experience for me. I don't know if that's a common thing in Italy, but from what I read online, many foreigners have to deal with this issue. And it's unnecessary. It's absolutely unnecessary. It just drives me insane that people do this. I mean, they're coming here to contribute to your country in a country where you're struggling, you know? A country where there's too many old people and they're draining the coffers. No offense to old people, they've worked, they've done their dues, they have a right to their pension. I agree with that. But it also means, you know, that we need enough young people to be able to sustain that. And Italians are not having enough young people to do that. So why upset the foreigners that are coming here that could easily contribute to your economy? It doesn't make sense. Rather just take advantage of them. And it just drives me mad. That's not a thing that's just unique to Italy. Obviously it's everywhere, and please don't get me wrong. There are good things about living in Italy, and there are many people who are happy to talk to you. Most of the village here where we live now is fantastic, and most of the people that we've met have been really, really nice. And we haven't had any other issues other than with this landlord, but it can really put you in a difficult situation. So it's the bureaucracy that you just got to wrap your head around and make peace with it. And if you know what some of the rules are going into it, you'll be able to play the game. Arriving here with not knowing that, that's going to make it so much harder. And if you're not a citizen, it makes it even harder. So whatever you do, get it in writing. Okay, then it comes to termination. We're almost done, just 3 more little things left. So termination is a little bit tricky. In Switzerland and in South Africa, where I've lived as well, usually it's somewhere between 1 to 3 months termination. In Italy it is 6 months, and that is by law. There's no renting a place without it being 6 months notice. Obviously, if you're renting for 3 months or 6 months, that's not going to be the case. But I'm talking, like I said at the beginning of the video, for residential rentals. So there's mostly people who are coming to stay here for an extended period of time. Termination is 6 months. The termination letter must be sent by registered post. So you have it sent by registered post where they have to sign for it, and you send them 2 copies, and you request they send one back that has been signed originally via registered post to you. Obviously, scan, make copies, keep copies, but have that original. It's absolutely vital that you have that original. Okay. So that's one very important thing, because if you don't do that, that ends it all for you. You might have done all of this other stuff that we've discussed now, but you didn't do that. He'll keep the money if you had to pay the deposit. So make sure that you have everything in writing. And like I said, registered post. Termination letter and registered post. Very, very important. Okay. Last but not least, if you're renting with pets, like we are, for the most part, you won't have issues. Especially if you have a small dog or just like 2 cats. Most of the time, you won't have issues. But nonetheless, get it in writing, whether that's email or they sign something when you view the apartment for the first time that says that your animals are allowed. The type of animal that you have and the amount that you have. In general, this is not going to be an issue, but I would suggest having it there nonetheless, just in case. So, that's that's pretty much my tips. I do think that there's some more information that I could give out, but I also don't want to extend this video too much. So those are my main tips for actually renting, the process of renting and what to look out for, and the main things that should prevent you from having to fork out a lot of money to deal with a nasty landlord, rental agency, landlady. Unfortunately, it is something that happens in Italy. And it is known that it happens in Italy. It doesn't really matter where you go. There's a good chance that you will also be lucky and find someone who is just happy to have you there. And if you can build a good relationship with your landlord, landlady, I would suggest that. Relationships are the building blocks of Italian society. And the more people you know, the more people you have a good standing with, the better. But again, you're coming here blind, you're not going to have that. So just know these few things that might make it a bit easier for you to make the transition. Now, I do have a little bit of extra information, including like resources, subletting, privacy, and all that in the article. So please go have a look at that link where you can get that extra information. And then think of anything that I might have missed or you have a question about and ask me in the comments. And then that way, whoever else is watching this video can also get that information. I will reply to the best of my knowledge. If not, I will do what I can to research it. And that's that. That's pretty much what I have to say on the topic. We had a really difficult situation with our previous landlord, and the stress that he put us through is partly why our cats landed up going to the hospital, because it was the 2 males that had stress-induced crystals form in their urinary tract, and it was very expensive because they had to go to the vet first of all, and they had to be hospitalized a week each. And because we don't have a car just yet, and public transport is not very frequent where we are, we're in a remote village, we had to pay a shuttle service to take us to and from the vet when needed, and then for continued care we had to have a home visit vet come every second day for almost 2 weeks to give them their medication and their treatment. It was very expensive, and it was right after we had to pay for the new apartment. It was not good. Finally made the last payment to the lawyer that helped, well, say helped, the pinch of salt, take care of the situation with the previous landlord, but we ended up losing our deposit as well as losing our sanity, really, and the money that we had to pay the lawyer, which was almost as much as the deposit. So it was tough. and I don't want other people to go through that. It's unnecessary. So I hope that this helps. I hope that this sparks some thoughts and leads you into the right direction. And yeah, like I've said throughout the video, just whatever you have, ask me down in the comments. I'm happy to answer and help open up that discussion. And yeah, so I hope you're all doing well. And if you are looking to move to Italy, let me know about that in the comments too. Tell me where you're going, why you're coming. I'd love to know. And if there's anything else that you'd like to know about living in Italy, go ahead and ask that as well. So, thank you for watching. And if you want to stay along on this journey, I talk a lot about living in Italy, and I talk about currently a bit of pregnancy and syringomyelia. It's the disease I have and why we came to Italy in the first place. And I also do some videos on food because I love cooking and I like to share that kind of stuff with people. And once we have land again, probably a little bit more on growing. So it's a bit of a mixed batch of things, and it's not always going to be exactly the same kind of thing. But it's exciting nonetheless to share, and I hope that you enjoy it. So thank you for watching, grazie tanto e alla prossima. See you next time. Ciao!